Good morning, options traders. Steve Gans here, along with Trader Cat this morning, and we're going to go through a little bit of chart analysis. It is January 12th, 2025. Trader Cat, you can't lay on the keyboard, though. That doesn't work. So anyhow, we're going to go through some charts here. All right, now that I got my pen, let's start doing a little marking up of our chart. So we can see we've had this big, long channel here that's been going for over a year now. Now, we're at the lower end of this channel right now. We're coming down and we're starting to push on the bottom of that channel here. Now, it's not out of the question. We've broken through the channel before and have gotten back into it. So it's not out of the question that we could do the same here, or we could simply just bounce right off the bottom of this channel where we are. But a couple things that are starting to look a little bit concerning. So in zooming in a little bit, we can see up here that we're starting a downtrend here, and we've made what has been lower highs 3 times and lower lows now 3 to 4 times. So many times that can signal a trend change. This week's going to be pretty critical. We're starting earnings announcements this week. And I should also say that one of the big reasons for this particular fairly large sell-off here a couple days ago was the announcement, the jobs report. And that jobs report, actually, that was here on Friday. And that jobs report came out better than expected. I had some of my friends call up asking, Steve, I don't get it. This thing came out better than expected. Why did the market sell off? The reason the market sells off is if it's better than expected, then that means that the Feds likely will not need to cut rates as much or as often, which means that we as consumers are going to have a higher interest rate on things we might buy, like cars and houses, etc., and credit card debt. So all of those things are going to slow us as consumers down a little bit. In addition to that, companies that are financing a good portion of their operation are going to pay higher interest rates on financing, which is going to cut the amount of money that they have in their bottom line, in their profits. So if interest rates stay higher, that overall isn't necessarily good for the market. Now, it has to be done sometimes to control inflation, which of course is what the Fed is all about, is trying to get a handle on that and trying to walk that tightrope, if you will, of keeping inflation away, but still keeping our economy moving forward. But again, looking at this, we're seeing this little bit of a downtrend here, little channel happening. We also have an increase in our volume and trading volume on that down day, which further gives me a little bit of pause. That tends to be also a little bit of a concerning factor when that happens. Now, I do want to show you something, though. If we look at this, let's just spin back here 2 years. So we've been in this upward channel for a year. If we spin back 2 years, we had the same thing here all through 2021, all through 2022, this massive uptrend. This channel that we were in, we did finally drop out of that channel, and we dropped down to another level of what would have been support in the market. But ultimately, that didn't hold either. But we can see we went through a year of sideways and downward chop, very volatile year. Let me just condense this a little bit here. But we can see that overall, we have these two channels that essentially are on the same trajectory side by side. And we can see what happens here when we drop out of the channel. We get into this craziness going back and forth, and then we start rallying back up, and then we finally break out to new highs, and then this overall channel and angle of the channel resumed again. Our big question right now is, are we going to drop out of this channel, or are we simply going to bounce off the bottom of it and continue higher? And again, we'll know a lot more about that as this week progresses and next week as we start to get some earnings reports. Let's take a look at another indicator here, which is the VIX, the volatility index. Is there fear in the market at this point? And if I zoom this in, yeah, there's a little fear here that came in on Friday. This is a real anomaly that occurred back in August, so I try to move that off my chart to get a little better picture because that was just a very odd occurrence that happened back then. But even we can see that volatility here, if I come in and put a channel on this, I mean, our volatility here is also starting to move up a bit. So that is an indication that, yeah, there's some fear coming in. There are people out there starting to buy insurance on their portfolios at this point. Now, I also like to take a look at the rut. So we'll come in, take a look at the rut, see what's happening there. Now, the rut is starting to drop out of its channel. And again, rut does this from time to time. Any index can do this from time to time. It can drop out the bottom of the channel here a little bit, but its drop is a little more pronounced than it has been in the past. Now, there is what I would consider to be kind of a support resistance area here that it has dropped into. So now I'm going to be looking to see, do we break that? If we break, that's going to be also another kind of telltale sign that, yeah, we might be in for some real chopping markets, some downward markets, etc. Then I'll come in and I'll look at the volatility on the rut, which is the RVX, which you got to make sure there's a number of different RVX symbols here. We want this one right here. And the rut volatility, again, taking that huge spike kind of out of the picture there. It's also up a bit, not hugely, but it is definitely, all right, Trader Cat, stay out of here. You can't stand on the keyboard. See, you screw everything up when you come in and dance on the keyboard. So we got to avoid that. Anyhow, here we are looking at the RVX, and it also is starting to make higher lows. It's right now staying in a pattern there. It hasn't broken out to new highs. The RVX hasn't. But again, the rut itself has broken down a little bit out of that existing channel. Those are some things that we definitely need to keep an eye on as we go into this week. We start to see what's happening on earnings reports. Banks largely start reporting this week. They're not the meat of what we need to hear and see, but they're going to be the start of the trend, if you will, as to whether or not companies are continuing to meet or exceed earnings, which of course is what we want to see in order to keep our markets in enough fashion. That concludes the weekend review of our markets. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.